Welcome to the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. Welcome to episode 14 of season 3. And I just want to welcome you if you're a new listener. Our audience has grown a fair bit. Thank you. And if you're following me on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I want to thank you also. Those numbers are jumping up. I appreciate that. We are steadily heading up the rankings. So thank you. So, what's up in this episode? Well, we survived a hell of a week, didn't we? Last week was something else. We started with the equinox, of course, and then the new moon in Aries. Then we had Pluto shift into Aquarius, followed up by Mars moving into Cancer. Whew. I don't know about you, but I'm tired. Yeah, wow. I also feel relieved because as a Cancerian with a very late degree Sun and Mercury, Pluto hanging out in opposition was a lot. It was a lot. I'm not going to lie. That was heavy stuff. So we are, that's a Malcolm shaking it off if you can hear that. I think you can't because I think the mic is that good. But if you do hear shaking, that is my buddy. He's coming over to hang out with the mama. And if you don't know who Malcolm is, he's my wonder dog who rescued me almost 10 years ago. Next year, we'll have been together 10 years. So, time flies when you're cuddling. But anyway, this coming week will be also interesting, but not in quite the same way as last week. So no need to put your head between your knees and kiss anything goodbye. But it will be fascinating. And a big heads up, water quality will play a major role. I know the TikTok ban was what everybody was and still continues to talk about, and there's reasons for that, and I'll talk about that a little bit in the podcast, mostly because of the Restrict Act, which is really frightening. It's really frightening. They're not even pretending. I mean, they haven't been pretending for 20-some years, but man, it's very frightening. But water quality. I think you should find a water protector and hand them some money because Philadelphia had an issue with their drinking water because there was a chemical spill into the Delaware River, and Mars in Cancer attacks on water. And attack doesn't mean it's on purpose, but it could be failed infrastructure. It's still attacking the water. And Mars is trying Saturn in Pisces right now, and it will be throughout the week, and that's a concern. I think we could see some real interesting weather, and I think we'll hear more about pollutants in water and water quality. We may not hear about it on the mainstream news. Just saying. So I'll be talking about that in a little bit more, and then I'm going to cover the April astrology and kind of give you an overview and a heads up on that full moon that we start out April with on April 5th/6th, depends on your time zone, and what we have to look forward with that lunation. Okay, and remember, we've got a full moon workshop on April 2nd, Saturday, April 2nd, that I'll be leading and then doing a guided meditation on. People really love that. And if you're a patron, you get 50% off. Speaking of patrons, holy moly, we're closing in. We're getting close to 800. Our goal is 1,000. And that's exciting. Thank you so much for being a patron. And welcome. If you're new, we're going to be doing our patron shoutouts. That's where I shout out all of the new patrons. There will be new material coming out for certain tiers. Hold tight. I thought I'd get more done. That's me and my damn Sagittarius Mars. I thought I'd get more done on the 4 days I took off from readings, but I ended up just kind of recalibrating. There was a lot of energy right before Pluto ingressed into Aquarius, and Like you, I am subject to transits, and sometimes it makes it a little more interesting when you're an astrologer and you know what's up, especially if you're energetically sensitive like myself. So, I'll talk a little bit about that too, and then I'll be answering some astrology questions from patrons. Talking a little bit about coffee with Laurie today because it was so much fun, and I have a really great quote to share that really describes fifth house energy in such an eloquent way. And I want to thank Emily, the patron who shared that with us today in Coffee with Laurie. And I'll do that at the end of the podcast. So if you've been curious about the fifth house, and when I say it's creative self expression, you're like, I'm not artistic, I'm not creative. I think this quote eloquently sums it up. All right, let's get on with the episode. Let's talk about the April full moon and all of April's astrology and how we're going to wind up March. That's all up in the next segment. So get your laundry ready, get your dishes, prepped. And if you're on your commute, put your hands at 10 and 2, my friends, because we're about to head in to the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. Well, as I was saying earlier, what a week. And how are we going to end March? Well, all the big stuff is kind of done. All the big energy, and that was a lot in 1 week. Let me tell you, that was crazy sauce. So cardinal signs, and that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. If you had late placements in your chart, I mean, like, from 20 degrees to 29 degrees, you should be feeling a little bit of relief. And even with Mars moving into Cancer, that's providing a little bit of energy in those spaces. It could be crunchy, it could be chill. It depends on you. I feel more vibrant, more vivacious. I was even social on Sunday. That's crazy sauce. It's 11:11 p.m. while I'm recording. I'm actually re-recording this because I was trying to do a double whammy for YouTube as well as the audio podcast. And I was taking a break from the earlier recording, and I was just kind of chit-chatting to the video, only to find out I had not pushed the record button. So I think it's kind of funny. 11:11 showing up on the PM variety, because I'm recording this Sunday night, and I'm like, yes, well, it was a good idea to record then. And it was, because when I listened to the playback, my mic wasn't plugged in all the way, and there was some clickety-clack going on. So isn't it nice when we do ourselves a favor? And that's a really good example of how energy can work. You think you made a mistake, like, oh man, I didn't push the record button. And then you find out, well, it's probably good because when I played back just the audio file, there was this annoying clicking sound. So that's taken care of. So what do we have to look forward to in April? Well, first we have to get through March. And what we have at the end of March is Mars trine Saturn. So Mars in Cancer is trine Saturn in Pisces. And we're going to move from transportation accidents and issues with rail, etc. It doesn't mean those will stop entirely, but we'll be looking more at water quality issues, potential floods, very wet weather. We'll see, and this is global. It's not just in the United States. We could see some nationalistic tendencies happen. We're going to hear a lot more from Congress and even the White House talking about protecting us for our own good. Oh, don't you just feel safe when people do that? We're going to protect you from yourselves. We're going to see more people organizing globally with Pluto in Aquarius. Now, it's not going to be in Aquarius for very long here in 2023. I've talked about this in past episodes, but I'm going to just beat that donkey all the way. It will only be in Aquarius until June 11th. Okay. In fact, Pluto goes retrograde at the end of April. All right. It goes retrograde at the end of April. Do not clutch your pearls, folks. Retrograde doesn't mean bad. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think we're going to see the issues around water quality, especially in Philly, but I think that we'll see them around the rest of the world. And I also think we're going to see some issues with petrochemical pipelines, whether it's Keystone pipelines or other. Just infrastructure in general has not been maintained. We have not forced corporations to take care of the equipment they use, thus the rail derailments. We're going to have a lot more rhetoric around espionage. We'll see more leaks. It was kind of funny. Poor Elon, his source code got leaked. Oh no, maybe we shouldn't fire 80% of our staff or more in abruptly. It's funny, they're not really looking in Elon's direction, even though he took money from the Saudis for his Twitter buy. And Saudi, it's funny, in the Restrict Act, they actually mention Iran as an enemy state. And Saudi just made a detente, just made a commercial agreement with Iran. And so but I don't hear them talking about Saudi money in Twitter. I think maybe you should talk to your Congress people about that if they're going to go after our rates. Oh, Lord. And if you're new, what qualifications do I have to talk about politics? Well, I have a degree in international relations, and I specialized in U.S. Middle East policy as a young lass. Then I worked for multinational corporations overseas. And I spent part of that time assessing on the ground politics and political situations to see if people should put their money directly in as investments or if they wanted to franchise their operations with local partners. And so that's kind of what I did. Didn't like the evil empires, so I went indie young. There's some of us Gen Xers who are cool. None of the cool ones are on the congressional committee that is looking into TikTok, though. They're very lame, just gonna say. Also, if the troll who's been coming at me on TikTok is listening because I censured them in my Discord for name calling is listening, I did not boot them. They chose to leave. But I've been having a troll who seems very familiar with me on TikTok these days. They accused me of being a Republican because I criticized a sitting president. And yeah, not the first time somebody's come at me like this in my lifetime. Being over partisan is always a problem because it skews your perspective. And I think we're going to see some of that with Saturn and Pisces, a lot of delusional rhetoric. I think we'll also see people planting their feet in the ground and trying to ground into their idealism and the brainwashing that happens culturally. I know there's some very well-known TikTokers like to say the parties aren't the same, and no, they are not the same. But one party panders to egregious hate-filled behavior to get votes, but then acts on it. The other party panders to the leftists and those who are disenfranchised and gets the votes and then throws them under the bus, and they all take the same money. So just saying that they may not, and there's individuals in the Democrat Party who are not of that ilk, and their voting records show it, but they are but a handful. Just notice the bipartisan effort to strip our rights away, but feel free not to criticize egregiousness. So keep coming at me. Have fun. You have been noticed, and I suppose that's what you want. But yeah, for the rest of you, yeah, I was vague. What we used to call vague booking back in the day when we didn't have many alternatives to the meta hellhole of division. But anyway, the people of TikTok are coming together in interesting ways, and that's a very Pluto in Aquarius theme. I think we'll see more of that building as time goes by, at least through April. Let's see. So let's talk about April. Let's talk about April. Did I seem petty there? I hope so. Um, so again, I heard a great quote. I was at the town hall meeting for the grassroots social media efforts, and they described their conflict resolution process as tolerance. But if you do not display tolerance, you have not earned tolerance. So that's a very important thing to remember. So I don't think it's petty, but yeah. Anyway, so let's see. We're looking at April, and April's going to kick off on April 5th. Well, it kicks off on April 1st, obviously. April Fool's Day. If you're a Gemini, get your pranks ready. So April 3rd, we have Mercury entering Taurus. Now, that's going to be an interesting time. When Mercury enters Taurus, is going to enter into a square with Pluto. Now, this could be a transportation accident, but it could be a food recall. We could be looking at forever chemicals. That may be a topic of discussion, and we may see the feds make another move or an issue with a bank. Okay, now I haven't pulled up that chart. I'll look at it before I write about it in Patreon. Okay. But yeah, so April 3rd, Mercury enters Taurus into a square with Pluto. And that's going to be it'll certainly be a touchy day. You know, we'll see people, you know, it'll be creative as well. We might see some cool art, some cool music. Depends on what you're doing. Let's see. April 5th/6th, because of time zones, we have the full moon in Libra. The full moon in Libra. The full moon is always in the sign opposite of the sun. So the sun is in Aries now. And then the moon will be in Libra, and that opposition is what makes the moon full, because the sun is shining its rays on the full moon, and that's what we see on that moon. That's what makes it full. Okay. That's a pretty contentious chart. That's a pretty contentious chart. You have to remember, Libra is not about hearts and flowers. Taurus is much more so. We'll probably hear more about lonely men once once Mercury goes into Taurus. You know, those poor babies aren't getting their behinds wiped by women anymore, and that makes them lonely and angry. Oh no. Anyway, looking at April 6th, 5th, for me, it'll be the 5th, and it'll be about 9:38 p.m., which puts that at about 1:38 a.m. Eastern. Okay. Just to put it in perspective, you got to know your time zones, folks. Of course, this is happening mid-degree of the sign. This shows us that it is not quite concluded business. We're right mid in a process. And it's going to be contentious. And I think we're going to end up seeing on the 6th some more BS when it comes to freedom of expression. I think there could be some things happening, maybe in France, Germany, Great Britain, maybe even Scandinavia. There could be some social action. I mean, the protests are still going on in France. Saw that the police sided with the people because they don't want to retire older either. It would be nice if police would use their brains here, but you know, I happen to know firsthand that some police departments actually won't hire you if you have above 120 IQ. And I know that because I know a young man who was trying to join one and did not get hired because his IQ was higher than that, which isn't that frightening. God forbid people use their brains. Not all police departments, but yeah, frightening. Yeah, so I think we'll hear some things around food production, food plants, as well, because Mercury will still be squaring off with Pluto. And there could be some transportation issues and things to do with farm equipment or grain processing, that kind of thing, like equipment, mechanisms getting gummed up, that kind of thing. It's interesting, all right. Of course, Mars will be in a square, or not a square, sorry. Mars will still be trine Saturn. We could see some very interesting weather at this time. I could also see more big tornadoes, maybe a tropical storm forming. The results of flooding could be up. I think we'll see more collectivism, more acts towards cooperative behavior. I think there'll be more quote unquote attacks on the internet, but there could also be more shared information about source code. We could see more hacking. I think that could be a big one. We could see a bank hacked, and we may hear about a large bank as well having more trouble, and it could be Deutsche Bank. That's a bit concerning, but I think that actually might happen actually this coming week, this week. And what was I seeing for that? Let me get back here into March. I'm looking at the chart here. Let me get to the 28th. Let's see here. Yeah, this is not quite the 28th. It'll be the end of the month then. It might be April 1st even, but I think it might be. We got March 31st. We're going to have Venus conjunct Uranus. Yep, that'll be like the 30th. That's a concern financially because that's a big conjunction and we're already in shaky territory. And oddly enough, the moon will be in a square. The moon will be in Leo that day, March 31st. So patrons, pay attention to the Crunch Report and other things. Horoscopes, etc. I know I'm late on the Gemini moon horoscope. Forgive me. I was social. It doesn't happen very often. I did tell myself I need to be more social though. I feel inspired in a way I haven't in a while. Yeah. So and the other thing we have this week before I go back to that April chart is, let me look. Is it? No. It's like the 29th maybe. Let me look. I'm calibrating things by hand, so I don't know. It might be actually. It might be today. It is today. So today, March 28th, we are looking at Mercury conjunct Jupiter in Aries. We could see some arsons. We could see people lashing out. We could see things get pretty feisty out in the world. Yeah, it's a little concerning. Let's see. That was already today, actually, because it's happening right now. Oops. Oh my gosh. Oh Lord. It is an interesting time. That's right. Well, today is the 26th. There we go. I don't have my glasses on. Sorry. So the 28th, which is Tuesday, we have Mercury conjunct Jupiter. Expect some big, bold promises. Expect some big fighting words. Expect the trolls to be fan-freaking-tastic. Aries risings, you better watch it. You gotta keep control of your reactions because you very much can. You want to do that. Be strategic. I'm in your corner. Be strategic. Popping off at the wrong person doesn't end up well. And again, I think we could see some big fires. They might be electrical fires, etc. But that's March 28th. So moving back to April, I know I jumped around there, but this is the podcast. When I write about it, I keep things in chronological order. But Remember, I'm unscripted because I'm like the gingerbread man. Run as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. I cannot be contained. I'm going wild. Fold another towel. Keep your hand on the wheel. Watch that left lane before you turn, get into it. Keep an eye on your exit. All right. So that full moon in Libra. We're all going to be having a big sense of justice with the full moon in Libra. We will be wanting justice, and the days leading up to it may show us how unjust things are. I have a Libra moon, and nothing riles me up more than unfairness. Okay, unfairness. And when things are egregiously out of balance, when the power dynamics are out of balance, man, that can fire me up. And if you've ever seen me get fired up on a live stream, and it doesn't happen all the time, I try to keep my blood pressure nice and low. I try not to get too excited about much, but once in a while, it takes over. And this full moon is a doozy. We'll be doing a full moon workshop on April 2nd. If you're a patron, you get half off. It's already pretty affordable, but I talk about the mundane aspects of the full moon, give you the full rundown, go through what it will do in your personal chart. Okay, so not everybody's, because, when we end up with 50 people there, that would keep us there forever. But I go through the houses, and if you're a patron, we've got a walkthrough video that is highly visual and shows you how to find those signs in your chart so you know where things are at. And I'll go over it a little bit during the workshop. Then I take a Q&A, and I don't record that part because I find that people sometimes ask very personal questions, and I want them to feel safe doing that. And then we do record the full moon ceremony / guided meditation that helps prep you energetically to meet whatever's up on deck coming in that full moon. So remember, if you're a patron, you get 50% off of that. You can find those discount codes in your Crunch report. Okay, only about a third of you watch those videos when I put them out or read those emails. If you're not going to get the most out of your bennies if you're not reading. So there we go. Yeah, and just a quick heads up in case you missed the email. I know I said the $100 coupon was only good through the 23rd, but you know what? I had a payment gateway issue, funny enough, that week. And so because people are having trouble registering for things or signing up for readings, I've extended that coupon to March 31st. So you can save $100 on readings. Save $100 on readings. That's with any of the astrologers and myself. I've got a new Solarpreneur reading as well, where I take a look at your business chart as well as you. It's a 45-minute reading, and in that 45 minutes we take a look at some of your best timing and some of your best approaches. So it's a quick overview. It's not exactly the mapping game I do in the small business coaching, which a small business is different than a solopreneur. Solopreneur is a one-person operation. Small businesses tend to be more traditional brick and mortar real estate agents, things like that. So, anywho, alrighty, I think it's time for some patron shoutouts because without you, there is no me. Totally appreciate you. Again, our numbers are growing. I'll talk about that in the patron shoutouts. This podcast is taking off, guys. I really appreciate you. It must be the new mic. That's what it is. Alrighty, it's now 11:33 p.m. on a Sunday night as I record this, and it is time for patron shoutouts. Oh my gosh, you guys, thank you so much. We are just growing. I want to give a big thank you to Angela, Carrie, Elizabeth, Anonymous, Laurie, Marissa, Candace, Carly, Maria, Sarah, or Sora, Elena, Ginger Gypsy, Kim, Martins, times two, Alexis, Tessa, Tammy, Haley, Alex the Leo, Ren, Marianne, Tammy, Rachel, Robert, Michelle, Stephanie, Rachel Lynn, Amy, Marcy, Tatiana, Coney, Sylvia Henderson. Let's see. Sabrina, Nora, Olivia, Patrick, Madeline, Mar, Abigail, Kathy, Agnes, Emma, Shrigley, Keija, Jordan, Lisa, Paula, Ella, Bethel, Marta, Judith, Ryan, Sue, Sarah, and Brianne. Welcome to the Awake Space Patreon. And for those of you, I see a bunch of people who are in the Planet of the Month. I'm wondering if the welcome message is getting out because you haven't joined the special Discord. I will get a message out ASAP about that so you can join in on the discussion. This month we were talking about Mercury, and we had a great Q&A session on Saturday. Great Q&A session. Really good. I don't record those, so you kind of just have to show up because it's either me or my astrologers running that. We will have one more office hours on Mercury. And in April, we're talking about Venus. Now, if you want to know about Planet of the Month, that is where I give a 2-hour workshop. Sometimes it's an hour and some change because last month I had a schedule conflict. But I also talked a lot about it. I ran to make up for that one. I did 2 office hours. Normally it's my astrologers who are extremely competent and have been fully immersed in astrology, which is very different than studying on your own. Okay. They've been dunked in the deep end and they have a lot of experience under their belt now. So, working with people and with charts. So don't think they don't know my answers. And be willing to listen to their observations as well. So, all sorts of cool stuff. And if you're in Southern California, I'm going to say the Super Bloom. Oh my God. Patrons got to listen to me today at Coffee with Laurie. And I was driving north, and so I was on speakerphone or Bluetooth. And happily driving towards Los Angeles area, and gorgeous super blooms down the freeway. Just whether it was the poppies making those little baby mountains, just absolutely awash and aflame with color, or even just the splotches of purple and yellow, and sometimes with the yellow wildflowers, with the green and gold, it looks like velvet. It was just beautiful, and that was a little wish fulfilled. I saw the Super Bloom in 2018, and I'm not one to stop and go hiking because I would never go off trail anyway, and I don't want to deal with the parking situation with other people. But I just like to see it. It's just beautiful. So people had to listen to me going, "Oh my God, it's gorgeous." But I just have to say again, we had the most lovely time at Coffee with Laurie. I enjoy hearing from everybody. I'm not teaching a class. I want to get to know you because without you, there is no me. And we've hit some real benchmarks with the podcast lately, partly because I found out we were in the top 5% of podcasts globally per our listening numbers. And by kind of talking that up, it's invited more people. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome and thank you. We got over 2,500 listens on episode 13 in the first 6 days of the podcast. Now, you'd be amazed at how low the numbers have to be to get in the top 3%. It is much lower than mine. We are now getting our average on plays per episode is now 2,700. We need to get to 3,979 individual listens to reach the top 1% of podcasts globally in any category. I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm a 54-year-old woman sitting on the edge of my couch in my living room with a really cool mic, my computer, and my dog. I don't have a big fancy team. Okay, my mods are cool. Don't get me wrong. They help out in the Discord. I've trained astrologers to do their own readings, and we work on a profit share. And by the way, when I give those juicy discounts, that's coming out of my cut, not theirs. I want to support their process. So just letting you know. Yeah. I mean, eventually we'll split things, but not right now. So, and we have almost 3,700 Spotify followers. That's a new metrics they've put up. That is amazing. You know, you're listening in from 68 countries. By the way, we're number 2 in Tanzania and number 27 in Azerbaijan. I kind of Google us. I don't know where we sit everywhere, but I'm like, if you're in Tanzania, thank you. Thank you for making us number 2 in the spirituality and religion podcasts. If you're in Azerbaijan, thank you. Thank you for listening and making us number 27. If you're in the Seychelles, comment ça va, mon frère? I know it's my brother-in-law. You know, yeah, it's got to be Jerome. Yeah, so big shout out. But yeah, you know, it's amazing. We've got listeners all over Europe, the United Kingdom, Australia. So our top 3 countries are the United States, Canada, and Australia. And then we're listened to all over the world. Romania, Ireland, Turkey, let's see, Croatia, Switzerland, Poland, Slovenia, Philippines, Saudi, India, Chile, Hungary, Serbia, Lithuania, and again, Tanzania. Thank you. Thank you for making us number 2. Malaysia, Czech Republic. I'm just reading through a few just because it's kind of cool. Mauritius. Hey, from Seychelles to Mauritius. That's exciting. Hong Kong, Egypt, Vietnam, Azerbaijan, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Guyana, Tunisia, Trinidad and Tobago. Who knew? If you're listening from Trinidad and Tobago, I just want you to know the name of your country has fascinated me since I was a child. I was the kid who read all the National Geographics. I've traveled all over the world, listening in China. Thank you. Paraguay, Ghana, Nigeria, Lithuania. Actually, I have a friend in Lithuania. And Estonia. Turks and Caicao. Very cool. Thank you, Islanders. Ethiopia, Armenia, Algeria, Honduras, North Macedonia, Guatemala, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, Macedonia, Belize, Cayman Islands, Libya, Georgia, Montenegro, Cambodia, and I'm not reading off every country, but how freaking amazing is that? That is so cool. Scrolling through the list. I'm not going to read them all because we'd be here all day. Seychelles and Sierra Leone. Wow. Cambodia, Curacao, Antigua, and Barbuda. Cool. And I tell you, it used to be that I had more listeners on Apple Podcasts and a lot less on Spotify, but now they're in a breakneck tie, and then other. So, and by the way, just so you know, the majority of my listeners are age 25 to 44, which is cool. Thank you, young people, for listening to this old chick. We got a lot of guys listening. Almost over 10% are male. And then we've got 2% identifying as non-binary, not specified, which I totally get. A lot of times I'll be like, you don't need to know my gender. Go ahead and try to guess. I'll be whatever I want to be. Depends on the day. I got Gemini, Venus, and Mars and Sag. One, I don't like to be defined, but two, I don't know. It depends on how I feel that day. So that's how I am. But if you feel very strongly about how you identify, I respect that 100%, and I will honor that, because everybody has an individual right to self-determination. Okay, and I will stand on that. And that's my Libra moon talking. So again, I was talking a little bit about that full moon in Libra, and I think we're going to see people like really taking a stand of like, no more, none of this. So I think we're going to see some people really pushing organization, and because of that makes me think that there's going to be some more egregious stuff happen. So hopefully I'll see you at the full moon ceremony on April 2nd. Remember, patrons, check your inboxes. And if you're not getting the emails, I need to know, because I'll let Patreon know, because I'm a Patreon ambassador, and I can let that team know, and they get to the development. Or you can check in at the patreon.com website, just patreon.com/the awake space. All right, let's get on with the rest of the podcast. All right, let's talk a little bit more about April and April's astrology. So we have the beginning of retrograde season happening in April, and we call it a season. Most people only think about Mercury retrograde, but I want you to know, like, from Saturn out, the planets spend a good amount of their time retrograde. And this is why I like to say retrograde does not mean bad. It is an optical illusion from a geocentric point of view, which means from the Earth and our point of view as human beings looking up at the sky, it appears that the planets are moving backwards. They aren't really moving backwards. We know that. Okay, as an astrologer, if you're an astronomer listening, I know. And to the astronomer who is being highly critical, even though they're an evidentiary medium, are you shitting me? But they were being highly critical of astrology, saying, well, do you take all of the trans-Neptunian planets into consideration? Honey, we can not only take all of the fixed stars, but all of the Kuiper Belt. Everything in the sky could be attributed. We don't do that because those are massive amounts of data sets, and the art of astrology, the field of study that is astrology, is like data analytics, okay? So we're looking at wide archetypes and known factors that have been observed for thousands of years, okay? And you're welcome, because you wouldn't have astronomy without astrology. They were paired until the 18th century, mind you, okay? Sheesh. I'm sorry, but Galileo, Copernicus, Kepler, and Lilly were all astrologers. Ugh. Anyway, so is Al Baruni, okay? You should know who he is if you're an astronomer. Anyway. But anywho, we know that retrograde is not an actual astronomical thing. But as human beings, our perceptions shape our reality. Okay. And so we know from observations that certain things are reflected when we look at the positions of the celestial bodies. Okay. Now, as for the outer planets that, and we refer to them as astrologers transpersonal. I prefer that term much more than the generational moniker because Pluto has a very, very irregular orbit. And I think there's often, Pluto does have a heavy hitting energy because we've lived through the fastest part of the orbit. I think it becomes much more subtle as we move through the slower part. I think I think my theory will be validated at some point in the future, hopefully. I probably won't be alive at that point. But I think, 100 years from now, when astrologers are going to be like, oh my God, can you believe those 20th century and 21st century astrologers, what they believed about Pluto? But also, it'll be, I think, less intense because there'll be longer spans of time. Longer spans of time. So, trying not to cough. We're going to cough. I covered the mic. Sorry. It's late and my throat itches. I've done a lot of talking today. But anywho, so Pluto will go, Mercury goes retrograde first in April. Okay. And Mercury retrograde does not mean bad. Okay. It doesn't mean bad. It means it's a time for revision. Okay. So when Mercury is direct, it has more Gemini-like qualities. And when Mercury is retrograde, it kind of exhibits a little more Virgo qualities. Okay. And then you add in the signs. So you've got Taurus Mercury, and as it retrogrades, we're probably going to be seeing more looking into banking regulations, financial regulations, and issues around qualities of food or food transportation or production. And you want to look to where Taurus is in your chart to see, how is that going to be impacted? Okay. Yippee skippy for me, that's going to be the sixth house. So I'm probably going to have to redo some work here or there, or, just revise some things. I might be getting back to the book at that point. I don't know. We'll see. That happens while my mom and dad are here, because that week I'll be spending time with my folks because they're coming out to California. I'm kind of excited about that. So we'll see how that visit goes now that we're all old and don't argue anymore. Funny enough. Oh, there's stuff, but it's kind of past the point of getting into it at this point. Then end of the month, April 29th, ish, Pluto goes retrograde. I have it also in May, so let me actually look it up, but I believe it's the 29th. Sometimes when I'm making these slides, I'm using someone else's ephemeris, and sometimes it's not as accurate as others. I'm also doing all of this let's see. Oh, you know what? I think that is from the 2022 slide. So I think it actually is May 1st. For 20, I wonder if I didn't redo the April slide. Hang on. Let's see. I did redo it, but sometimes. Let's see. Okay. So May 1st for 2023. May 1st for 2023. Let me see when Mercury goes retrograde. I probably got everything except that last thing on there. So yeah, Mercury will station retrograde on April 21st. April 21st. So I think I didn't change that slide that I've got. Oh, Lord. Speaking of a Mercury, I'm just thinking of Mercury retrograde. And I'm like, oh, no, my slide was wrong. But anywho, we'll get it right. I have to go redo that calendar for myself. I tell you, sometimes she's tired. But again, the only notes I put down was wet because of the Mars-Saturn action. And Mars will remain in Cancer until May 20th. So wherever Cancer is in your chart, that's what's really being activated. Venus moves into Gemini. Venus moves into Gemini. Let me just Google at this point because I don't trust that slide deck anymore. On April. I think I also had something amiss in September. In the presentation, I was giving the right information. I think I just had to. Let's see, Venus. Which, by the way, Venus will go retrograde this summer. Venus goes retrograde in July. It'll be in Leo. It gets to 28 degrees Leo, and then it starts sliding back. And so it'll be in Leo until like October, from June to October. That should be interesting. Oh, the drama. Oh, the drama. But it could be good stuff too. I just think it'll be probably a little bit dramatic. Let's see. So Venus, Gemini. I'm actually looking forward to Venus and Gemini. Because that's my Venus return. Venus returns are great. Returns, by the way, while I'm looking, I will give you the 411 on returns. Returns are neither good nor bad, except for Venus returns. Venus returns tend to be like a good day, unless like all hell breaks loose and like everything in the world squares off with your Venus and opposes it, and it's a little stressful, but it still gives you a benefit. Like you don't die, you know. Let me see. So anyway, a return chart is it just shows what the theme is up. What? April 11th. Nope, that part's correct. Okay, so I didn't completely screw up my slide, only halfway. Of course. So April 11th. April 11th to May 7th. We will see Venus in Gemini. So, all you people with Venus and Gemini, get ready for your Venus return. You can make a Venus return chart. I've now found those buttons in my software that I've had for 3 years. I switched software and I hit the ground running so damn hard with it because I had a different software that I never set all the parameters or sat down with all of the interface. And one day I was clicking buttons, went, oh, there it is. But anyway, a return chart is a divinatory chart. It's a divinatory chart. It's part of the mundane astrology practice. So I think there gets to be so much confusion because everybody wants to be the great psychological astrologer, and they talk about Saturn returns as if it's the long mile, that you're walking to death row on it. No, that's not what it is at all. By the way, if you want to know about Saturn returns or interceptions, I've got 2 videos up on YouTube doing visual walkthroughs and explaining what they are. People have found it very helpful. Would love it if you went and took a look. They're not long. Okay. Now the new chart walkthrough I haven't put up on YouTube yet. That's still a patron only thing. I've got that linked up in the Crunch Report. Again, you want to read the Crunch Report because that's where all your goodies go. So April is not as intense a month, and that's good because I don't think we could live long term with the March intensity. But we will be contentious. We will be contentious through April. I think it's a big setup for May, to be honest. May's got some very interesting astrology, including Jupiter popping in to Taurus. And that's going to spell some real financial issues because it pops into a square with Pluto. And I think on a mundane level, we could see a bank issue, and that might be Deutsche Bank. It'll be a large financial institution. I don't think it'll be a retail bank, though. I don't think it'll be a retail bank or a credit union. I think it'll be an investment bank or a private equity firm, like I think we'll see some real shakeups in the financial world, the private equity world, like Blackstone, BlackRock, and Vanguard. Those places are going to be shaken up because they own most of the world's things. Yes, yes, we allowed people to play the game of acquisition, and they've acquired it all. Haha. Which is one of the reasons I really encourage people, if they have an inclination to be independent, to own a small business or a service providing business, to look into that, but to be smart about it. Like, don't just quit your day job, because you have to look at your own security as well. And I think April and May are going to be months where people are really kind of doubling down on looking at, okay, what do I want out of life? What do I need out of life? How do I get that? I keep getting asked real estate questions. I think commercial real estate will tank further. I think after May 16th, we will see probably the residential housing market in the United States kind of go meow. But I don't think we'll see rates that make it easy for people to acquire homes. I think we'll continue to see the Fed put the squeeze on interest rates, and I talked about that a little bit earlier. And we saw that in 2007, and it didn't stop 2008. We're just numbers on a balance sheet to the decision makers. They don't see us as individuals with lives and aspirations and hopes, and it takes a certain amount of sociopathy to be in those positions. And when I was a young woman and kind of jet-setty and living a little different life and sat at the table with those kinds of people, I was utterly horrified by their worldviews. Utterly horrified at the lack of understanding of what it is to be human. They're very two-dimensional thinkers, and they have the morals of, I don't know, I don't want to insult any other living being, but maybe, I was going to say a nudibranch, but maybe of a barnacle. I don't know. That's kind of insulting to barnacles, but not a whole lot, and they give all kinds of excuses, and they're very entrenched in their ways, and they're not as smart as you'd think. It's kind of disappointing. Everybody wants to think about that they're evil geniuses, and evil maybe, geniuses not so much, just privileged. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think there's going to be pushback at beginning of May, end of April, when Pluto's stationing and then moving retrograde. I think we're going to see pushback against unions, trade unions, cooperatives of all forms. I'm still going to push the cooperative thing, though. It's harder to push against a cooperative than it is to push against a union, just because they don't expect co-ops to do well. Okay. And it doesn't mean co-ops don't get bought into by the money and the power, because they do. You have to watch infiltrators in unions and any kind of community organization. You have to keep an eye out for infiltrators. It's kind of why, I keep some of my juiciest stuff behind a paywall, but I recognize the people who would troll me. Yeah, they're willing to pay a couple bucks to do that. Yeah, like the Trumpers. They'll come in and they'll be like, you didn't get it right. Yeah, Trump wasn't arrested. But remember, if you go listen to last week's episode, I'm like, supposedly, right? It's still not, it hasn't hit the end of March. I will be surprised if we don't have some interesting things this coming week. There are so many charges pending. They're just, there was bomb threats. There was, he's been threatening the prosecution and in New York. It's gonna happen, folks. It's just they have to worry about security measures, and yeah, so that'll be interesting. I find it interesting that they mentioned it, though, the week I was seeing it. So I'm pretty sure, like seeing it pretty clear in the distance, So remember, we talked about it a little bit earlier, I think, when I said, transits, it's like the ringing of a bell or a gong, depending on the weight of it. And the sound travels out. It's not it's not always about the date, it's the time frame or time range. So I still think we have by the end of March to see an indictment. And if it happens like the 1st of April, I'll be like, come on. I said this in June of 2022. I mean, for real. If it's April 1st, come on. Give me a break. That's still pretty darn good. So, but I feel 99% certain he'll be indicted, and it's just a matter of when. And I was looking at likely windows if you listen to the Patron only podcast. So that's me postulating. But yeah, I would like that to be a correct prediction, because I think it would be cool to be able to say I called it. But, I can put my ego aside. It hurts. How's your towels doing? Did you get your laundry folded? Are your dishes washed? Did you make it to work on time? Are you sitting in the parking lot, sipping a latte, sipping a coffee, sipping a matcha, sipping a hot cocoa? You know what? Hot cocoa with 2 pumps of raspberry is really delicious on a cold day. Just saying, all you folks up where it's cold. I drank an iced coffee for the first time in weeks today. Might have even been months. It was nice. But probably going back to the warm beverages this week as the storms roll in. And I think we will see, and I'm going to reiterate that if you are in in California on the West Coast, I think we will see severe flooding. This will not be the mega flood. I do want you to prepare for one more out into 2025, however. And I'll talk about that closer to getting to that astrology. I think, we could see some internet disruption in the beginning of April. There might be some seismic activity of note. Since we didn't have any with the moon going into Taurus and squaring off with Pluto in Aquarius, I'm thinking we're just probably not going to see the same impact as we do when Pluto's in a Earth sign. So that's interesting. You have to remember, we've never observed Pluto in Aquarius before. We're the first astrologers in history to actually observe and take note of the energy of Pluto in Aquarius, which is really cool. Just like we were the first ones to observe Pluto in Capricorn, and Pluto in Sagittarius, and Pluto in Scorpio, and Pluto in Libra, and Pluto in Virgo, and Pluto in Leo, and Pluto in Cancer. Because that was the first time Pluto was visible to human beings, And it was funny because somebody was like, what about Babylon? And I was like, no, they couldn't see it either because it's a trans-Neptunian planet. They did not have the ability to see it until 1787. All astrologers could see was Saturn. As far out to Saturn, that was it. And then Uranus was discovered in 1787, which it is the planet of rebellion. It is the planet of revolution, innovation, industry, mechanisms, all of that stuff, and the internet. And yeah, so we shall see. We shall see. We'll also... Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff happening later in the year, but April gives us it's not a break per se. It's just not as intense. So I think the intensity isn't going to be as strong, but there's a lot of upsettedness moving into April. There's going to be, I think, a playful rebellion. I think we're going to hear about pranks. I think we're going to hear about people doing silly forms of protest. I think, and not unmeaningful. I think there'll be meaningful forms, but I think because of the ridiculousness of the situation, ridiculously egregious. We're really tired of our rights being stomped on because it's happening all over the place, and yet, and the other side's like our guns, and it's like, wow, talk about misplaced priorities. But yeah. And again, with Mars and Cancer, we'll be hearing a lot about what about the children? Yeah, well, the children in Philadelphia would like clean drinking water. Just saying. All children everywhere would not like to have to do active shooter drills. That shouldn't even be part of a child's vocabulary. But what would we know, right? What would we know? All right, I am going to end this segment, and we're going to get to some astrology Q&A. Astrology Q&A in the next segment, and then we'll wind up the podcast because this old lady needs to hit the hay. So I want to thank everybody who showed up to Coffee with Laurie in the Discord this Sunday. And if you forgot about it, that's okay. It's the last Sunday of every month. You can put that on your calendars. The last Sunday of every month, we meet in the Discord. I don't record it. And this one was just really lovely. Because I was driving, I asked other people to do most of the talking, which was great because I like to hear your voices. I have Venus and Gemini. I like to hear what other people have to say. And Emily, one of the patrons, shared one of the most beautiful quotes. And it was quintessentially fifth house, and it's the most eloquent description of creativity and what it means to be creative. And so often when I'm reading for people and I get to the fifth house and I say creative self-expression, they say, well, that's not me, I'm not creative. And I'm like, yeah, but you're human. We're always creating, we're always crafting, we're always shaping, we're always expressing ourselves. But because of how we're taught about creativity through our social conditioning, through our education, it's always got to be somehow some kind of art, right? Like you've got to be good at it, or you've got to be a good dancer or a singer or visually talented or something. And the fifth house rules all forms of creativity, creative expression. That includes sports. Okay. So I'm going to read this quote that I asked Emily to share. She's Queen Emily in the Discord. It is 100% what the fifth house is about. So, and this is from the book The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. And thank you, Emily, once again for sharing this with us. I couldn't cry because I was driving, but if I choke up, pardonnez-moi. Everyone is a creator. Those who do not engage in the traditional arts may be wary of calling themselves artists. They may perceive creativity as something extraordinary or beyond their capabilities, a call for the special few who are born with these gifts. Fortunately, this is not the case. Creativity is not a rare ability. It is not difficult to access. Creativity is a fundamental aspect of being human. It's our birthright, and it's for all of us. Creativity doesn't exclusively relate to making art. We all engage in this act on a daily basis. To create is to bring something into existence that wasn't there before. It could be a conversation, a solution to a problem, a note to a friend, the rearrangement of furniture in a room, or a new route home to avoid a traffic jam. What you make doesn't have to be witnessed, recorded, sold, or encased in glass for it to be a work of art. As I'm reading this in the Discord, I'm going to pin that message because it is so beautiful and so true and so important. And just one of the responses is from one of our patrons, Laurie. Thank you. I got it. I never thought of myself as creative until I met Laurie. I can't wait to read this book. I just love it. So I'm going to read that book myself. That is quintessentially it. It is creative to be human. It is human to create. The fifth house is naturally ruled by the sun, and the sun doesn't shine to be seen. It shines because that is what it does, and humans create because that is what we do. We create messes. We create disasters. We create monuments. We create bread. We talked about that in Coffee with Laurie. We create blankets. We create shelter. I remember when I was working in the Ivory Coast back in 1990-91, right out of college. Well, I had a little bit of I had to hustle to get that job, but I got to the Ivory Coast at the end of 90, very tail end of 90. And I remember I didn't live in the expat compound. I didn't live behind the 12-foot walls with the razor wire. I lived in a different kind of expat community. I lived where Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, were in the same apartment kind of complex. And it had 6-foot walls with razor wire, not the 12-foot ones. They use razor wire a lot there. And the Liberian refugees, because Liberia had fallen apart, and brutally so. And I remember walking with one of the people from the office of the company that I was representing while I was there. It was a franchised operation. So I was there doing some audits and some work for the division I was in. And I would walk through the marketplace with someone from our office as they showed me around. And I watched people take rubber tires that were spent, couldn't be patched one more time, and turn them into flip-flops or belts or jewelry of a kind, And I saw people repurposing everything in the most creative of ways. And I thought, my God, that's amazing that people are that inventive. And why don't we do that? We could save so much landfill space, of course, according to the powers that be, that doesn't make very much money. So we need to exhaust all of our resources. But it is ingenuity and invention is human. And I thought that quote just summed it up really beautifully. We had a great coffee with Laurie. I really encourage you to come into the Discord. I know Discord is kind of weird to use, especially if you're not used to it. I had a learning curve with it too. You don't have to do it right. You're not going to break it. Click around. Click around. We'll try to get a walkthrough video done. I've been meaning to do that. We'll see if we can't get that done. But thank you, Emily. So next segment is Q&A, and that'll wind up the podcast. But I just really wanted to share that with you, and I'm getting my energy back after a long bunch of transits. And I realized at the beginning I said I would tell you a little bit about that. But sometimes when you're an astrologer or an energy worker of any kind, you get more information than necessary, and you can tune in. You can tune into it. And I'm already sensitive, highly intuitive. And so that sensitivity has been interesting. So, yeah. Yeah. And by the way, if you friended me on the Discord, it's probably I don't take a lot of friend requests because I already get a jillion and 16 already get a jillion and 16 DMs. So, yeah. So it's not personal, I promise. It's just I get a lot of DMs and I'm trying to limit the amount of time I am responding to things. But yeah. Anyway, I really love that because it is human to be creative and it is part of everything in what we do. And don't let some elementary or middle school or high school art teacher, music teacher, TV show, I mean, God, all those stupid talent shows on TV with the criticism of the performers and the you've got it, you don't got it. I have perfect pitch. Okay. I have perfect pitch and I have incredibly sensitive ears. And what hurts me is things that are out of tune, off key, unless it's done with joy. So discordant music or people who think they're great but maybe aren't, that can hurt. But somebody could be totally out of tune and I can hear it's flat, it's sharp, it's somewhere off in another country. It's not even close to being in tune. But if somebody comes at it with joy, that does not hurt me. I will just feel their joy. Okay. And again, normally a discordant sound or something really off key will physically cause me pain. I mean, I'll put my hands over my ears, and if I can't, I sit there and wish I had earplugs. Unless it's done with joy. Unless it's done with joy. And when it's done with joy, it is rapturous. So sing with joy, dance with joy, create with joy, drive with joy, write with joy, have a fight with joy. You know what I mean? It's like even a good fight can be art. And remember, the sun doesn't shine to be seen. It shines because that is what it does. All right, let's answer some astrology questions. All right, it's time for astrology Q&A. Astrology Q&A. These are questions offered to me from patrons. So this one is from Priscilla. And it says, when two planets are close, within 6 degrees, but in different signs, how do they influence each other? Or don't they? Good question, Priscilla. They do. They have influence. I don't think they have as much influence, though. I think it's a much lighter thing. So let's just say again, my sun and Mercury at 28 degrees, and so of Cancer. So for the last few months, Pluto has been in opposition. And I woke up on the 23rd, and Pluto had I got up in the afternoon. So Pluto had switched signs, and I felt lighter, but I noticed that my brain still felt a little not slow, but not supercharged like normal. And I was slightly disappointed because Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius is trine with my Jupiter-Uranus conjunction at 0 degrees Libra, and sextile my Mars at 2 degrees Sagittarius. And so I thought I'd have a lot more energy. But I felt lighter, less pressure, less physical pressure, and a little less mental slowness. And I was trying to decipher that energy, and then Mars popped out of Gemini and into Cancer. And I think because those two events were happening so close together, it was kind of hard to parse what was what. Now that we're kind of on the other side of that, I have much more physical energy. So that is nice. And I think having Mars pop into another sign helped. Um, and I can just kind of sift and sort through, because being an astrologer for a long time, you learn how to kind of feel in, and or at least with my Cancer Mercury, feel into the energy, sense the energy. And so I would say when it's in the same element, okay, or modality, it will have more intensity. When it is by degree, it's there. The planets are communicating, but it's not as sharp of a connection. So, another way to describe that is like my Mars is at 2 degrees of Sagittarius, which makes it trine my Sun and Mercury by degree. However, if it was, say, at 28 degrees of Scorpio, I might actually be coordinated. But because it's kind of out of element, on that trine, or out of, and it's only by a degree, only by the math, I'm a klutz. I just bounce well. I don't break anything. But I can, especially when I was younger, I could trip over my own feet and fall in public like the best of them, and then pull a Chevy Chase. I'm okay. So I hope that makes sense. So it's not as intense, and it's not as good of a connection. Think of static on the line. It's not as clear. If you were on Coffee with Laurie today, you would have heard me hit a hill, get up into the hills, and it was Robo Laurie voice. So that would be that weird Zoom call sound when somebody's Wi-Fi isn't good or their cell signal isn't good. So it would be the out of element or out of modality. Elements being fire, earth, air, water. Modalities being the qualities of cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So that was a good question. Thank you, Priscilla. Let's look up the next one. I have that little ditty song in my head that I use for the patron shoutouts. I love it. It's a happy little tune. Let's see. I haven't looked at that before. Let's see. I'm trying to find a. Oh, so what are a couple of placements or areas you'd look at in a chart to help someone think of a good form of exercise that they could stick to? And is that a thing? Well, astrology is really individual, person to person, but there are things we can look at. For fitness routines or health regimens, you can look at the sign governing the 6th house. But I hate to give a prescription, because you have to remember everybody's different. It takes more than one thing. So if I see somebody's 6th house and I look to the dispositor of that house, and then so in my case it'd be, I've got Taurus on the 6th house, and then I'd go look at Venus. Venus is in Gemini. Everything goes back to Mercury in my chart. I need to move just move my body. I don't need to do weightlifting. In fact, I hate it. And I don't like gyms. You can't make me exercise. Let's put it that way. I'm very stubborn. I have to want to. I have to feel motivated. And usually, this is bad. Even when I was in my 20s, my first husband and I decided to join a gym. Oh my God, I digress into story time because I'm tired, but such a 6th house Taurus. So I didn't like the atmosphere in the gym. I felt uncomfortable, 6th house Taurus. And so I did the treadmill for a minute because that's the part I like. Okay, I like to walk. I have Mars. You want to look at your Mars. That's going to tell you the type of exercise you will like more than others. I like to walk. I have Mars and Sag. Um, I don't like running. I don't like jogging. I like walking. And not just walking around a track. I need to be able to see something interesting. Just doing it to do it, like on a treadmill, I can, but it's boring. Okay. Take me to a large botanical garden and I could be there all day. Okay. And I'd walk around, I'd walk my legs off. But anyways, so I didn't really like it, and the women were kind of bitchy in this gym, and I felt really uncomfortable, and I was very self-conscious because I was in my 20s, like early, not quite mid-20s, so I think it was like 23, 24. And no, it was before I had our first kid. So I was like 22, 23, and I just didn't feel very comfortable. So I left and I went to because this was at we were in another country. So the nice gym was at a hotel. And I went into their cafe and I went and I had ice cream and rewarded myself for like 15 minutes of walking. Um, give me food prices and I'll exercise. Um, Food treats. So that's one way to know is like what sign is on the sixth house? Where's your Mars? Because that's going to show the kinds of activities you don't mind. Look for the rulerships of the sixth house. And again, I do dispositions. And everything disposits back to Mercury, my final dispositor. Not everybody has a final dispositor, but mine is Gemini. I mean, Mercury. And by the way, when you look at the rulership of your chart, you don't really include the signs. So, like Mercury itself rules my chart. It's you don't look at my Cancer Mercury rules the chart. Mercury rules the chart because it everything in the chart goes back to that in a final dispositor. But anywho, so you're gonna look at the sign in the sixth house. You're gonna look at it. You're gonna look at your Mars. That's gonna show what kind of activities you like and your motivation. Your motivation. Okay. So understanding that Mars will show the motivation, Venus will show your preferences, and then any planets in that sixth house will give more to the story. It'll give more to the story. So I have like Saturn in the sixth house. And so for me to start a habit of any kind or a routine of any kind might take a minute, but once I'm into it, it's hard to break it, good and bad. Endurance. So it just depends. It just depends on the chart. So I can tell you as a professional astrologer, I will often recommend clients, you know, go look at certain things if they need a certain kind of movement. Like some people, dancing is their exercise. Other people, it's swimming. Sometimes I recommend, because sometimes people have physical ailments, and I'll ask if I never ever diagnose. I won't say, "Oh, do you have this problem?" I might say, "Do you have stomach problems? How's your food going? Do you have sensitivities? No, good, okay." Or if yes, then I'll be like, "Are you working with a doctor on that? You may want to, if you haven't, or But I usually refer people out. Sometimes I'll refer people to like fitness experts. You gotta shop around. Yeah. But yeah, there are things. Now this question was from Saffron. Thank you, Saffron. Yeah. Or Saf. She gives the best hugs. I know you, Saffron. We had lunch at Christmas time, New Year's time. Best hugs. Good lady. You should follow her at Saffron Henderson on TikTok. Because I don't think TikTok's really going to go away, but you should follow each other there. And just in case. So there was a question. Let me look at one more. We're not doing an astro chat today within one of the astrologers. We'll do that next episode. Partly because I got started so late. Okay. Let's see. What is this? All right. This is from Andrew F. What is the North Node? I've understood it to be a possible life goal. That's one way of summing it up. So the North Node and South Node in common astrological vernacular are the north node and south node of the moon. All planets have nodal calculations, okay? Because it's not an actual thing in the sky. It's a mathematical calculation. So the north node of the moon is, in my understanding and experience, the skills we're here to cultivate in life. Okay, the things we came to acquire, understandings to acquire, and it is not inside of our comfort zone. It is not. It does. If it's just not, we're not necessarily comfortable doing it. Okay, the south node is the skills we came in and kind of some of the resources we came in this lifetime. So if you could imagine that, like if you play Dungeons and Dragons, you've got your natural attributes, right? And so, this is like you've got your little starter kit of supplies in your bag. You got your 50 feet of rope. You've got a fire starting kit, and maybe you've got a potion or two, whatever your DM has let you have. Um, that's kind of it. Our little starter kit, our little is our south node. These are the skills we brought into life, and both the sign and house position matter in that, and then any aspects. The north node is what we're here to learn. That's our quest. It's our quest. Now, it's not about failing or passing. It's about being on the journey to it. And it is, I like that. My other way of describing the north node is it's like a new pair of shoes. They are awful cool looking. They're snazzy and they pinch your feet. You gotta wear them in a little bit. So we're presented with different opportunities in our life by transits. When you have your nodal opposition, there's no such thing as a reverse return. I don't know who comes up with this shit, but I'm like, it's a nodal opposition. Why don't we just make it easy? It's an opposition. Anyway, which is halfway through the cycle. Say, come on. You put the packet on the glass. Which glass? The little glass dish in the microwave. And I'm not making fun of you, Andrew. But anyway, so good question. North Node is the skills we're here to acquire. You could say it is your purpose, your dharma, your path, but we're never really off our paths. You'd be amazed. Our souls will take advantage of all situations to meet the agenda. Okay. We don't get tested by the universe. We don't get thrown in front of buses. We don't have that. It's not the universe. That's life in a physical body. There's just stuff. And so, but our soul will use all opportunity to meet the agenda. And soul is just a word, okay, that I'm using. That our essence, our source self, okay, the part of us that is the stardust. Okay, I mean, we share the same neutrinos and bosons and particles and subparticles and atoms as the entirety of the universe. We just happen to be constructed in a different way. And we're having a different experience because of that physical construction. So be easy on yourselves, because the universe isn't sitting there going, oh my Lord, did you see what Andrew did on Friday? No, it's not how it works. Only control freaks who'd want to oppress a population to keep them from accessing their noodles, their brains, their will, their divine spark would sit in judgment in such a way and be so petty. I don't think the universe works that way. Not really. Not really. But again, if somebody does believe that, that's up to them. I think each of us has our own wisdom to access, and my hope is to provoke enough thought that that you can find out your own understandings and truths and make sense of your own experiences through your own personal lens, because that is empowerment. You don't need to believe like me. We do not have to share the same opinions. We can vehemently disagree. But as long as you know what you believe, that is what matters. I'm Laurie Rivers, and I want to thank you for listening and putting up with my rambling as I'm tired and getting ready to head to bed. Blessings. And I hope to get the laundry done and the dishes put away, and I hope you made it to work just fine and safe and dandy. Thank you so much for listening.